Most people think that surviving a freezing winter night in the wilderness is all about building the biggest fire possible. It's a natural instinct. When the temperature drops below zero and the wind starts to howl, we want to see those massive orange flames. We want to feel that roar of heat. But on the American frontier in the 1700s, a big fire wouldn't just keep you warm, it could actually get you killed. In the unforgiving landscape of the 18th century, a large fire was a beacon. It produced thick plumes of smoke that could be spotted from miles away. It cast a bright glow that destroyed your night vision and signaled your exact location to anyone or anything lurking in the darkness. Furthermore, a large fire is a glutton. It burns through wood far faster than a lone traveler could ever hope to gather. Yet, there were men who lived in these conditions for months at a time, without cabins, without tents, and often without any visible fire at all. One of those men was Simon Kenton. History remembers him as the Iron Man of the frontier. Kenton was a legendary scout and woodsman who navigated the frozen wilds of what is now Ohio and Kentucky. He was known for his uncanny ability to survive weeks of sub-zero temperatures, often sitting motionless through the night while the world around him turned into a block of ice. So how did he do it? How did he stay warm enough to survive without a cabin or a roaring bonfire? The answer lies in a nearly forgotten method of subsurface heating, a trick of physics and nature that was likely passed down from indigenous nations like the Shawnee and the Wyandot. Tonight, we are going to rediscover this lost skill. This is the story and the science of the underground heat trick. To understand why this method is so brilliant, we first have to look at the real enemy, exposure. Most people believe the cold air is what kills you, but that's only half the truth. In a survival situation, your body loses heat in three main ways. There is convection, which is the wind stripping the warmth from your skin. There is radiation, which is your body heat leaking out into the cold air. And perhaps most dangerously, there is conduction, the direct transfer of your body heat into the frozen ground. A traditional campfire only solves one of these problems. It provides radiant heat, but only to the side of your body facing the flames. Your back remains freezing, the wind still hits you, and the ground continues to suck the life out of you. Simon Kenton needed a solution that addressed all three. He needed a heater that was stealthy, fuel-efficient, and provided 360 degrees of warmth. The process begins with the earth itself. Instead of building a fire on top of the ground, Kenton would dig a shallow pit. This pit wasn't large, roughly the size and depth of a human head. By digging into the earth, you are creating a combustion chamber that is naturally insulated. But the real secret wasn't just the hole, it was the fuel. Kenton specifically searched for dry white oak bark. If you've ever sat by a campfire, you know that different woods behave differently. Pine pops and throws sparks. Cedar burns fast and hot, but white oak bark is unique. It is incredibly dense and high in carbon. When prepared correctly, it doesn't flare up into a bright flame. Instead, it smolders. It creates a bed of deep, glowing coals that produce almost no smoke and an incredible amount of steady, long-lasting heat. He would start a tiny fire inside the pit, just enough to get the first layer of bark glowing. Once a base of hot coals was established, he would layer more bark in a crisscross pattern. This pattern is essential because it allows a tiny amount of oxygen to circulate, keeping the embers alive without allowing them to burst into a flame. Then came the final, most important step of the construction. He would cover the pit with a light layer of soil. He didn't seal it completely. He would leave two small air channels, each about the diameter of a finger, to keep the engine breathing. What he had created wasn't a fire anymore. It was a subsurface thermal mass. No light was visible, no smoke was rising, but beneath that thin layer of soil, a powerhouse of heat was radiating upward. But how do you use that heat without a tent? This is where the frontiersmen practiced what they called making a little room. Kenton wouldn't lay down next to the pit. Instead, he would sit directly over it, legs folded. He would then take a heavy wool blanket, a staple of the frontier, and drape it over his head and shoulders, letting the edges fall all the way to the ground, surrounding him like a bell. Inside that blanket, a miracle of physics occurred. The rising heat from the buried coals was trapped by the wool. The blanket acted as the walls of a tiny, private room. The ground beneath him, warmed by the pit, stopped the conduction of cold into his body. The blanket blocked the convection of the wind. Within minutes, the air inside that wool bubble would rise to a comfortable temperature, even if the air outside was 30 degrees below freezing. There are accounts of frontiersmen waking up after a heavy storm with several inches of snow piled on top of their blankets. To an observer, they looked like nothing more than a white mound or a snow-covered rock. But inside, they were warm, dry, and completely hidden. They could sleep sitting upright leaning against a tree, while their underground stove continued to burn for 12 to 18 hours on a single armful of bark. This isn't just a fascinating history lesson, it is a masterclass in efficiency that still holds weight in the modern world. Today, we rely on high-tech gear. We have synthetic sleeping bags, propane heaters, and battery-powered hand warmers. But all of those things can fail. Propane canisters run empty, batteries die in the cold, synthetic fabrics can melt or tear. The method used by Simon Kenton relies only on physics and a deep understanding of the environment. It leaves almost no trace. When a frontiersman left his camp in the morning, he simply filled the hole with the remaining soil, scattered a few leaves, and the forest looked as if no one had ever been there. In an era where stealth camping and low-impact survival are becoming more popular, we can learn a lot from the Iron Man of the frontier. The most powerful survival skills aren't the loudest ones. They aren't the ones that require the most expensive gear or the biggest displays of power. Often, the skills that keep you alive the longest are the ones that are quiet, invisible, and work in harmony with the laws of nature rather than trying to fight them. History proves that the people who survived the harshest conditions on Earth weren't necessarily the ones with the most tools. They were the ones who knew how to use the Earth itself as a shield. They knew that a little bit of knowledge and a small hidden ember could be more powerful than a roaring bonfire. So, the next time you find yourself in the great outdoors, remember the lesson of the little room. Remember that sometimes the best way to stay warm is to look beneath the surface. And remember that the secrets of our ancestors are still there, buried in the dirt, waiting for us to dig them up once again.